Welcome to this episode of Crap No One Tells You. With me today is Bob Lepore from National Hotel Consultants, LLC.
Yeah.
Good to see you again, Bob. Haven't
Nice to
seen
see
you in a while.
Come. It's been a few years.
So let me just cut straight to the point. What is some crap no one tells you about the hotel industry?
Wow, there's a lot of crap in the hotel industry. Let me just tell you, post COVID, it was crazy, and during COVID, it was crazy, like so many industries too, right? But there's a couple of things about the hotel industry that people should know about, whether they're traveling or whether they're looking to work in the hotel industry, which is a gangbusters business right now post COVID. If you've tried to book a hotel room, you know what I'm talking about. So, but people need to realize right now the hotel business is trying to recoup from COVID, and so they're trying to make up for 2 years worth of losses. So if you want to book a hotel room in Philadelphia, for example, I looked at it last week with my wife, and I was like, what, $300 to stay in a budget hotel? I'm like, is that the Ritz-Carlton? No, that Ritz-Carlton was $700. Wow. So it's really crazy right now. But what nobody ever tells you about all these things, you see all this advertising now out there for all these websites to book rooms, whether it's
you're talking about like the Expedias, the kayaks,
they've got 70% market share. It used to be, if I was running a hotel, I had a consulting assignment for a year running a hotel in Old City, Philadelphia. Used to be in the days before these websites, 80% of the reservations would come from the brand. They would come from Marriott or Wyndham or Hilton.
Right.
Now it's less than 20%. The remainder of the reservations come from a piece from Expedia, a piece from Kayak. They all take a piece of the action, right? To do what? I'm not really sure, right? You get the same bed, the same room. You hope the room attendant cleaned the shower appropriately for you, right?
I'll give you an example. We just traveled down to Tennessee this weekend, and our plans fell through where we were going to stay. So we jumped on one of the apps. We found a hotel we liked, and we were going to book the room, and it was like $91, whatever it was. And we're like, you know what? Let's call the hotel directly and see. So we called the hotel, and they gave us a quote for $160 a night.
Sure.
And I'm like, why would I book through the hotel for almost twice the price that I can get it on the app for the, once again, exact same room, exact same hotel, right?
Right.
So, like, how are these sites able to offer it so heavily discounted compared to just calling the hotel?
Well, it's funny. Most of the time, the situations are reversed. Usually, if you call the hotel at the last minute, you'll get a better deal. Usually, you'll get a better deal.
That's what we thought.
All of these hotels have contracts with these big companies, Expedia, being one of the largest, Booking.com, Priceline, that requires that they offer the same rates to the general public. So you can go online and you can see it's $150 here and $150 there and $150 to the general public. So I always tell people, join the membership programs. They're free. You can be a member of Marriott Bonvoy or Hilton Honors, because there you can see a lot of hidden rates when you go to the brand's website and earn points. And you can usually cancel your reservation without a fee.
Okay.
Most of these companies, like Expedia, take between 15 and 25% from the hotel. Right. And then they charge you a fee to book, which they don't tell you until you get the last page, right? All of a sudden you see, here's all your expenses. What happened to the $79? Now it's $125.
Yep.
So I always tell people, if you're a AAA member, everybody forgets about, the AAA rates at 10 to 15% off. Well, if you're going on vacation somewhere and you're paying $200 a night to stay in a nice middle of the road hotel,
10 or 15% off adds up.
For 4 or 5 nights, that's $100 that you might be off for their stay. So do your homework. And just like I tell people, do your homework when you're going to trying to decide, if you're staying one night, a bed, it's clean, safe, it's good brand, I'm good. If you're staying 3 or 4 nights, if you're bringing in family members from out of town, your mother-in-law is coming, right? You got to check the hotel out. Right, you got to make sure that everything is copacetic. So read the reviews online, but not all the reviews are the type of reviews you should be reading. There are companies out there, most of them in foreign countries, that hoteliers can pay to manipulate their reviews. Correct. And I can go on right now on my phone, leave a review about the hotel down the street that I stayed there on TripAdvisor. And, they say we have an algorithm. Hogwash. I'm like, I know I've been doing this. I can get around the algorithm. I leave a review. It's an awful hotel, terrible stay, whatever the case may be. So you do certain websites, however, and again, I'll go back.
Because there's no proof of stay
there's
required.
no proof. It's anonymous. Most of those booking sites let anyone leave a review. That's shocking. Shocking. You don't even have to actually stay there, but you can leave a review.
Yep.
Certain websites, however, have figured out, we need to rein this in. So Expedia and Hotels.com, two of the biggies, now require you have paid for a room, actually stayed at the hotel, and verified by the hotel that you actually stayed there. Then they allow you to read a review.
Got it. So a review is far more reliable off of someone like that than like a Yelp or
exactly.
Okay.
So I traveled recently, and I was in Asia, and so I'm reading these reviews, and of course I'm going to a foreign country, and I have no idea. So I go to this one little tiny area in India that we were going to, and I was looking at these small little independent hotels, and from some of the websites, this little independent hotel that I think had been open maybe like 10 years had like 4,000 reviews. My grandmother's lifetime, they could not get that many reviews. But then I went to Expedia and Hotels.com, and they had like 60 reviews.
Got it. Reasonable.
I put the 4,000 reviews aside and said, that's BS. And I actually looked at and made my decision, but then I called the hotel directly.
Right.
And looked at the rates, but then called the hotel and went to the hotel's website. And I was able to get a 10% better rate on the hotel's website than I was able to get through any of the major booking engines.
Okay. So what about running the hotel itself? That's a glamorous job, isn't it?
It is about as glam. No, people think back to movie hoteliers. I call them movie hoteliers. One of the most famous ones was Hector Elizondo in Pretty Woman.
Yes.
And there was a scene in Pretty Woman where he's teaching Julia Roberts' character how to use the forks, and everything is so elegant, and everybody's made up. Let me tell you, during COVID, I was cleaning bathrooms, I was checking in people, I was outside raising the flag. There was a point where I had to take my chainsaw down to the front of the hotel because there was a tree, and I couldn't get a tree company to come in. As a general manager, and I've been doing this since I was 22, and I had my first GM job at 22, no idea what I was doing, and then kept working my way through the industry over the years. The hotel business, and we've talked about this before, even when I was up in New Jersey working on a project, is a fun job. It is a fun job. When I talk about the hotel business, anything dealing with accommodations, hotels, cruise lines, casinos, resorts, all kind of lumped into, they're all like kissing cousins, right? And, but when you go to a bar, there's two types of people working there, right? When it's packed and it's busy. You go to a restaurant, it's packed and busy. There's the servers and the bartenders that are miserable because it's swamped. It's busy, it's crazy, you can't believe it. And then there's the smaller percentage of people that work there, and there are people like myself and people that I always look to hire that get energized in the craziness of
by the stress and the chaos and
the chaos. They're chaos kings and queens. There are people that you watch this bartender, and when there's nobody at their bar, they're miserable human beings. Not only because they're not making any money, mind you, but they're entertainers. They like to be energized. They love that vibe. And so you look for those kinds of people. Even myself, hoteliers, and most people need to realize, if I asked you what industries out there work 24/7, 365, every single person in that industry, every single business unit is open 24/7, 365.
Right.
There's a couple of manufacturing company industries, big companies. Yeah, they run 3 shifts. Yep, sure.
Medical, whatever.
Medical, right? Yep. But look at the stress level of every type of business that runs 24/7. Hospitals, yep, stressful. Fire, yep. Law enforcement, yep. Homeland Security, yep. Military, yep. Hoteliers. I mean, if you think about it, right? I remember running this hotel in Philly. We got in some new technology last year. When I was consulting down there, allowed your phone to work like the old Nextel phones, like a walkie-talkie, right? So fantastic technology. You don't have to call people on their cell phone. You can overhear what's going on in the hotel. But it also worked that if somebody pressed the button too long on their phone, it set off the emergency alerts, which would go to all the managers at 2 o'clock in the morning. Right. And, after 3 weeks of this new technology, I was sleeping in the other room. Until the new technology, because my wife was like, "I'm done with your fancy new technology." You have to be prepared to deal with that. You have to be prepared to, in this business, I say there are so many angles. At one moment, you need to understand what's the definition of clean. What are the standards of cleanliness and sanitation post-COVID?
So, just totally side question. So, cleanliness. Is there a difference between levels of cleanliness between different hotels?
Sure, there's absolutely no difference of cleanliness. You know, for years and years and years, I've said you should stay at a Super 8 and you should stay at a Ritz-Carlton, and they should be the same level of cleanliness. Now, the Super 8 might have that vintage 1987 tub, right, with the shag carpeting. But the shag carpeting should be clean, right? And the Ritz-Carlton is going to have the pseudo wood furniture, right? In the case of B, and the stuff at the Super 8 is going to be laminate, or, that you're going to get. You might get a few more amenities. Ultimately, what makes the difference is a certain level of service and amenities that you have. Although, surprisingly enough, sometimes you pay more at a Ritz-Carlton for the same amenity that you get for free at the Courtyard by Marriott. Like, why should I pay for breakfast? $42 at the Ritz-Carlton, because the eggs that I get at the Courtyard by Marriott for free, included in my rate, are just as good. But, it's just decides what people want, what experience they want. For me, traveling is you stay at a Hilton Garden Inn, it's just fine. When we want to go and do a vacation with my kids, there's certain amenities, oh man, if there's no pool, I am
not staying there.
I'm done. That's finished, because you gotta put the kids out to the pool and say,
so is that generally what you're paying for, is the amenities on site versus, you always pay for the bed and you pay for the bathroom.
Sure.
Well, sometimes you pay for the bathroom, depending on. Sometimes you just
Where
pay for a bed.
Where you been staying?
Yeah, I know. I did hostel travel in Europe.
Okay,
so
fair enough.
But so really, what controls the rates at a hotel then? If it's Ritz-Carlton doesn't have a pool, right? You're not paying for the pool.
Right.
But
what controls rates at an airline? Because there, all you're getting is a seat, and the amenities involve a bag of peanuts is how many people want that seat? Just like how many people want that hotel room. And that really is what controls the rates.
So it's really controlled by demand more than anything.
Nowadays, it's demand. Used to be set rates in hotels. Up until about 25 years ago, there were set rates in hotels. There was a rate tariff. It would get published, right? And this was the rate for a room with 2 queen beds, and this was the rate for a room with 1 king bed. That all went away around 2000 or so. And actually, I was running a hotel in Reading, Pennsylvania. We were one of the first hotels to actually create a website in Pennsylvania. And we started modifying the rates based upon demand. Hey, homecoming weekend, let's move those rates up, right? Because you know what, in January, when we're all twiddling our thumbs there, because nobody's coming to shop in the factory outlets, post-Christmas, I've got to give away rooms, and that yield management, revenue management model has completely changed the industry.
So I know we have different levels of hotels, right? Like we have these independent hotels, we have the chains, all that stuff. So when these rates are being set, when these prices, is that the local hotel manager or the GM for the hotel that sets those rates? Or is that often done on a more corporate, like more calculated level where there's, not to offend anyone, but when the numbers people are just crunching numbers and they go, this is what it should be this weekend?
Wall Street took over the hotel business about 25 years ago or so, and nothing's been the same ever since. When I started in the hotel business, it was about service. Yeah, profits were important.
It was about the customer.
Right. It was being a hotelier was a bit of a calling. Right, to do it. I tell people there are certain industries that have been around for thousands of years, right? The innkeeper and the lodge keeper. I've been around for thousands of years. It's not the oldest profession, but it's pretty high up there.
It's pretty old.
Usually had the oldest profession involved. But when you're dealing with setting rates, it still happens at the hotel level. There's still the economy of knowing what's going on in your market, what's going on with your competitors, and that can only happen with a local team. It's become so important that there are dedicated managers in hotels now. Very highly paid managers in hotels now that report directly to the general manager that's all they do.
Just figure out
They
rates.
sit in front of a computer. We call them directors of revenue management. These are six-figure salary positions. It's sort of an accounting wonk,
Right.
a little bit marketing, a little bit understanding how to position the hotel. And they don't necessarily build the websites, or whatever, but they literally look at these spreadsheets that will make your eyeballs fall. It's like what an actuary does, right? I mean, and they try to decide they're at this rate, this at this rate. They have computer technology that sort of helps them and makes recommendations, but then they need to tweak it. But those, I'm going to raise it $5, I'm going to, more than pays the salary of that particular position.
It's minor. I mean, if you have 200 rooms,
Sure.
and you get an extra $4 per room
That's
per
all
night.
the bottom line. Because I will give your listeners a shocking number, shocking number. I want them to all remember this whenever they're traveling from now on, if they really want to have, as my grandmother used to say, agita, right? And that is, it costs for a hotel to produce a room for you to stay in, $32.
That's including mortgage payments. That's everything.
That's everything.
$32 per room.
On the average.
I am renegotiating every time I
There
stay
you
at a
are,
hotel.
right? That is, on the average, the variable cost of a hotel room. Because let's face it, they're going to pay that mortgage.
Right.
Whether that room is, it's not like a widget manufacturing. You can put it on a shelf and sell it next week. Once that day goes by, it's gone. Once that flight goes by, that seat can never be booked ever again on that day. And the same thing with hotels. So, right now, hotels are really jacking rates up through the roof. So, they're trying to recoup what they lost. But ultimately, they'll tell you, well, our labor costs have gone up. Okay, it's not $32, it's $35. Because it takes a half an hour to clean a room. It takes 3 bars of soap. How much energy you're using when you're in the room versus when the room is empty. And that's pretty much it. Because they still have to staff this hotel, the guest services desk, still have to have somebody there, whether they're 10% occupied or 50% occupied. So that variable cost doesn't change. And you know what's really funny about it? That variable cost between a Super 8 or an economy hotel,
very
and
similar.
that Ritz-Carlton, that room variable cost doesn't really change that much.
Interesting.
Even in New York, where the labor rates are very, very high, it might be $50 to $60 to clean and get a room. That they're charging,
but that's still like
$700 to stay in New York City. So, I mean, hoteliers don't want you to know that. They don't want you to know that because they don't want you to negotiate. But listen, when can't negotiate for an individual hotel room, but when a member of your family is getting married,
and you need 20 rooms,
you need
or
20
30,
rooms,
now all of a sudden
you can negotiate those prices. And I always suggest to people, check out your competition, play the hoteliers against each other, let them know, because they love that business, especially if it's not on a Saturday night.
Yeah. So you said you started in this, when you were 22?
When I was 22.
How did you fall into this at 22?
I was in school. My dad, unfortunately, got very ill. I left school to come home to Rhode Island. And I had worked in high school as a temp, as like a temp, as a maintenance guy at a Howard Johnson hotel. I had one job. Back then we had key locks. Again, does anybody even remember those? We had key locks, and I had to go change the lock cores every time, like, people would check out. That was my primary job. Like, talk about them.
Wait,
I
they
was
used
16
to, they
years
used
old.
to change the
They
lock
used to
course
change
in
the lock
between.
course. Anytime there was a key that was missing or whatever the case may be, but a lot of times we would just randomly change the lock course. That was a standard back then for Howard Johnson. Okay. So that was my job. I was 16 years old. Loved it. Through college, when I went to school in D.C., I worked as a bellman. I was a houseman. I ran in D.C. I needed some money. I was a bellman. A lot of tips in Washington, D.C. Carried bags, schlepped bags.
Not a bad job for a...
Elevators not working, carry the luggage up. I did it. But, I was in school for international relations, Washington, D.C. Always wanted to be a diplomat. I was very much a people person. I loved that complexity of that environment. When I left school, went home, took 6 months off, stayed with my mom, helped my dad out, and took a hotel job at a hotel as an overnight clerk.
Okay.
We call them night auditors because they would do the books.
Right.
And everything back then is manual.
The funny thing is,
long forms, right?
one of my very best friends that used to run a hotel,
Right.
that's where he started.
And a lot of
doing
them
the
do.
accounting stuff overnight.
Because I tell you, you not only learn the accounting, but everything that can possibly go wrong in a hotel
Happens at night.
happens on the overnight show.
Right.
And I learned very quickly that with some people, when they check into a hotel, their common sense checks out. Because I mean, everything that can possibly that you would never, everything that your grandmother would whack you upside the head for don't ever do that, you do in a hotel room.
Right.
And there are things that influence us. There are social media influencers we all know of, right? What I learned is there are influencers in the hotel business. They're huge. They influence customers. They influence how we as associates and managers deal with situations in the hotel business. And they're very critical influences. Jose Cuervo, Jack Daniels.
Yeah.
I mean, these are very critical influences. Let me just tell you, whenever anybody is in a hotel,
Like within hours, they can have
or they even show up.
Right.
They show up with Jose on one shoulder and Jack on the other
Really?
shoulder,
Yeah.
right? And they're there. People are away. They're having fun, whatever. But they do things in hotels. Not everybody, of course.
That you
there's a
wouldn't do
minority
anywhere else.
that you would never ever think about. Pick up your pizza boxes, people. So
It always reminds me of when you watch these like documentaries on rock bands.
Right.
Right. And they're like, they had $1 million bill for a hotel.
Sure.
And I'm like, how did they have and then you see the documentary and you're like, oh, they basically had to rebuild the floor.
Right. And there's been a few.
Right.
Been a few where I've gone in and you've dealt with every situation. And I learned in that little small house, 65 room days in, and a year later, I was the GM.
Okay.
No idea what I was doing. I had totally no idea what I was doing. But I faked it well. And it's just common sense. Running a hotel is common sense. Treat people how they want to be treated. Provide them a safe, clean environment. People are traveling. They're nervous anyways. Is it clean? Is it safe? Is this a good area? Is the door locked?
Right.
I mean, did the person do a good job cleaning? You're always nervous. The most experienced traveler is nervous. I've traveled for 30 years. We were overseas. I was like, let me double check that door.
Right.
I mean, stuff I would take for granted at home, right? But that you could be in the nicest area of a major city and you're still like, and the little sounds and the lights and the things you never hear.
Right.
People are uncomfortable when they travel.
Slight
as it is.
paranoia sets in.
Exactly.
Right.
People are nervous when they travel. Our job as hoteliers, and what I learned early on was how to smooth that, how to create that team that really creates an experience. And so from there, I took a step backwards. I said, I love this business. I went back to school a few years later and I took a step backwards, took management positions at departments instead of GM and worked my way back up and really got the mentorship that I enjoy.
So you kind of got back to learning the basics of every department and then worked your way back into running.
Way back into it. So it took me 8 years to get back to a general manager's job in Washington, D.C.
I know you love being a GM, right? But let's say if money was no object,
right?
What position was by far the one you enjoyed the most?
Being a hotel GM.
Okay.
For sure.
Okay.
There's no question when you're dealing with, for someone that likes a lot of activity. I can sit there and read through a 30-page financial statement and read a balance sheet and go through all this. And I do it with the accounting and the CPAs and the controllers and all that other stuff. But there's also, when I was at the Wyndham Grand in Pittsburgh, 700-room hotel, 300 employees, 5 unions.
5 unions.
5 unions
Okay.
in the building, right? Different departments had different
Right, yeah.
unions, right? And unions can be challenging sometimes. And hotel that was going through a renovation while I was there. This was part of the project. I was in love with that job. Every day there was something new to deal with. It was an HR issue, it was a people issue, it was a group issue, it was a customer issue, it was a physical plan issue. There was marketing, there was sales, there was operations.
Because you had so many things going on. You were
and
transitioning, you were
can't do it
renovating.
all. You can't do it all. So you've got to create and recruit and retain phenomenal people. Somebody said recently, and I completely agree with them, you need to be, of your senior team, you need to be the dumbest person in the room.
Right.
And you hire people who are, I was a front office manager a director of housekeeping. I did engineering for a while. I worked in food and beverage. Nobody will give me a tray anymore because I can't carry one, right? I mean, I've spilled more coffee. So, but you learn
Right.
how, as a good manager that's a generalist, you learn how to read and create the team that's moving forward.
Well, and I think it's also important, like when you've done the job, you understand what type of person is going to be better at doing the job, right? And that's what I think a lot of people, and whether it's hotel industry or whatever, if you don't understand how the job's done, it's very hard for you to manage the job, right? And then at the same token, a lot of times businesses make the mistake of they find, oh my God, this guy's my best waiter. I'm going to promote him.
Yeah.
You're like, no, like two different types, right?
Absolutely. That trainer, we used to promote room attendants who were great room attendants. Their rooms were sparkling. I used to interview room attendants. I used to have a trick. I used to put my coat over the back of the chair that they were going to sit in. And right next to the chair, I used to put a jacket stand, that you would hang up with coat hangers on it. And every room attendant that I would interview, and as a general manager, I interviewed every associate that was coming onto a property. I would ask them to have a seat in the chair. And I would only hire the ones that picked up my jacket and hung it up, because those are the people that were retentive in a certain way.
Right.
Going to come and hire as a manager in a housekeeping department in a hotel, I would walk you out to your car.
Right.
Why?
To see what the car looks like.
Because I wanted to see what the inside of your car looks like. Because people that are retentive, OCD about cleaning, right, a certain way, that talent goes through their entire life.
Right.
So that's their natural desire to ensure that their space there is organized and meticulous. Those are the people that you want to hire in housekeeping. Who's the people you want to hire at guest services?
Yep.
People like me. My hands are flying all over the place as we sit here talking, and I'm very energized and energetic about being in a conversation about the hotel
I get the
business.
feeling you thrive in chaos.
I do. I enjoy it. But there's always that tenor of chaos for the sake of chaos is destruction.
Correct.
Chaos for the purpose of creating something unique.
Yes.
In an environment when you're in a restaurant and everything is going on simultaneously in a restaurant, and you watch kitchens and you watch chefs and you watch people expoing and you watch everything happening simultaneously, it's a beautiful ballet to watch.
So I got one more question for you. Well, at least one more question. So most of us that live in, anywhere near a hotel notice that we drive by, it's a Holiday Inn. It's a Holiday Inn.
Sure.
It's a Holiday Inn.
A lot of them out there.
It's not a Holiday Inn tomorrow. Why?
Okay. Good. I mean, that's a good question. Look, brands change over time. Holiday Inn has been around since the 50s.
Yep.
Right. IHG is the parent company of Holiday Inn, Intercontinental Hotel Group. Big, huge company, right? Second only to Marriott and Wyndham in terms of the number of hotel rooms or the number of hotel beds or whatever, number of properties. And IHG's been around for a long time. Holiday Inn is one of their core products. But every major company now has multiple brands. Marriott has over 30 brands.
So just because it changes names
Doesn't mean it's changing company.
Got it.
They change it because...
But why would they rebrand it?
Well, my hotel's gotten kind of tired. Everybody knows it as the Holiday Inn. So if I keep it the Holiday Inn and I spend $5 million to renovate it, am I getting the big bang for my buck that it's new and it's exciting and it's fresh?
Because it's just a Holiday Inn.
Because it's still a Holiday Inn.
Right.
That hotel in New Jersey. That
Not knocking Holiday Inn, by the way.
Not at all.
Just,
no,
it was just an example.
Absolutely not.
Good branding, because that's the hotel name I remembered, right?
But that hotel in New Jersey became a Delta by Marriott hotel. And when I was there, it was a Crowne Plaza, which was an IHG name.
So are there so we all know from a branding perspective, for example, that there's different levels, right? Like there's the Walmart, there's the Targets, there's the Crate and Barrel, like all different levels. Do hotel brands structure that in a similar way? Meaning like the Howard Johnson is like the bottom of the list, like the Walmart, right? And then you have let's call it a Delta that's like a Target. And is that, or do they structure the brands in that way? Or is it more just, we just need a new name and this is the cool name right now and we're slapping that on the building?
Well, hotel companies are smart organizers. Marriott's brilliant. And hotel owners, however, I've gotten frustrated over the years with them, because here's the trick that hotel owners do. You own a hotel. We're going to put a Sheraton name on it. what's it, one of the Marriott names now that they bought Starwood. And we're not going to put any Sheratons within 2 miles of you in this city.
Okay.
That's a pretty big area of protection.
Right.
We all know what AOPs are, right, and franchises, right? We're not going to put another one there. So all of a sudden, that market is growing, but this brand only has Sheraton. This company only has Sheraton. So what do? They buy Delta Hotels, which is a Canadian brand, and they go to the hotel owner who has the Sheraton and say, well, we're not putting a Sheraton right next to you. We're going to put a Delta right next to you. You know, technically, that's a separate brand. You know what? I can tell you, again, crap nobody tells you in the hotel business is everything you don't see,
Right.
the portals, the technology,
all the same
reservations,
software behind the scenes,
it's
isn't
the
it?
different name on the soap, right? The policies, the procedures. There's some little changes in the design and renovation. You know, they'll use the Delta logo instead of the
Like
Sheraton
the
logo.
brand look stays,
Right,
right?
but even the designs are the same. When we were doing that property in New Jersey, we could have made it a Sheraton, a Westin, a Delta. We could have picked any of the above, and the fees are generally pretty much all the same.
Right.
You know, as well. So there's not a lot of it, but it's
I
how
almost,
do we?
I almost feel like it's like a shell game with
It is.
names.
It's totally a shell game.
Because I remember, you know, cars. When Ford, it happened with multiple car brands, right? When they buy a car brand, like when Ford bought Jaguar, one of the things they say is you have to use 80% Ford parts, right?
Right.
Are you really buying a Jaguar now?
Sure.
Right.
Right,
Same
exactly.
same thing happened with Saab. I think it was Chevy that bought them.
Right.
And they were like, you have to.
GM bought them, yep,
Yeah, GM.
absolutely,
You have
yep.
to use 80%,
Yep.
which Saab refused to do, and now there's no Saab anymore.
Exactly,
Right. So I
exactly.
kind of feel like this is almost the same type of conversation. Is 80% of the stuff is going to be exactly the same, and the 20% may be things that like are more visual.
Right.
Like it's what's served for breakfast.
Right.
It's the color of the sheets. It's the logo. It's the unit. Like it's what the customer sees. It's not what really drives the engine, so to speak.
The challenge right now is that there's not brand integrity. The internet has leveled the playing field. You know, there used to be loyal business travelers to Marriott and loyal business travelers to Hilton. And business travelers are still fairly loyal because of points programs, right? Just like the airlines, right?
Right.
I need my points. But the rest of us now are more driven by what is the unique experience. Obviously, always location is the number one. I need to be there. I need to be close. I want to be in Old City. I don't want to be in the University of Pennsylvania on the west side of Philadelphia. I need to be in Old City because I'm taking my kids to see the Liberty Bell, right? So location is always the paramount thing, and that's one of the things that drives the rates. You know, we know it's July 4th weekend. Well, we know to jack the rates in Old City, Philadelphia, right?
Because people will pay whatever to stay.
People will pay whatever.
Right.
We know there's the flower show, so the convention center hotels will jack their rates up then at that time. But the brands right now, and I'll give you an example, in Philadelphia, downtown Philadelphia, more than 50% of the hotels, have a Marriott affiliated brand on their name. And yes, we all know what the law is about collusion and rates and stuff like that. And I can tell you officially that does not happen officially.
Right.
But when you can see in your brand what all of the rest of your sister hotels are doing, right? And where you want to be and how easy you want to be. And you can just go online and go, oh, everybody jacked their rates up this weekend, whatever. There's 2 Holiday Inn Expresses and 2 Kimptons in Philadelphia. That's the entire footprint for Intercontinental Hotel Group, but there's 28 Marriott branded properties in downtown Philadelphia.
In downtown Philly. Out of what, like 60
Right,
hotels?
out of about
Not
60
even?
hotels. Yeah. Out of about 55 to 60 hotels. So that's like crazy. So what they do is they create these brands, like the brand churn, right? And they stick a name on it and they stick another one. How many more hotels do you need? Right. That, you know, have this kind of brand in it. And it's a challenge. I mean, you know, independent hotels and boutique hotels, of which I've run quite a few.
They're pretty much history. I'm not going to say they're history, but like they are few and far between.
Well, what the brands have done is they've created affiliations, what they call soft brands. Now, the Autograph Collection by Marriott. It's basically an independent hotel that they're taking 2% kind of thing, right? Or they're taking a smaller fee on.
So they're taking a royalty for you.
You know, there's a
using
little
their name.
teeny tiny sign at the front desk that says the Autograph Collection.
Right.
Still run by the same people, same independent hotel, same fancy soap, whatever the case may be. but they want to be in Marriott's reservation system, and they want to get part of those Marriott corporate
So
accounts.
that's where the benefit is to these small hotels is getting access to that larger database, so to speak, of clients.
Absolutely. And they want to have access to those loyalty members and things like Hilton has the Curio collection, and IHG has a collection, and Choice has a collection.
Right.
So they all figured out, okay, we can't compete with them. Airbnb is jumping in there now too. We can't compete with them. So what we'll do is we'll offer them a carrier. We'll give them a little access. We'll let them be boutique and independent.
But we'll still get part of the revenue.
But not really do anything.
Right.
All they're doing is basically turning them on in the reservation system, and that's it.
Here's their address. Here's the room count.
And give me 2% of the money. So yeah. So buy lodging stocks right now.
So to kind of wrap it up, if someone wanted to become a GM of a hotel, what would you tell them to focus on?
Sure, good question. So GMs of hotels generally come out of operations, not exclusively. I mean, there's some GMs that have come out of accounting path in hotels, or sometimes the sales and marketing path of a hotel. But most GMs come out of operations. I started at front desk as an overnight. I worked in operations in the rooms, housekeeping, bell staff, front desk, or in food and beverage. They worked in food and beverage, restaurant, room service, banquets, whatever, and worked up through their level of department. And then you get to a point where you're at the highest level in that division of a hotel, and then you jump to the GM position. So I always tell people, you've got to know the numbers and you've got to know revenue. But the hotel business, and one of the most beautiful things about the hotel business, is we're not sticklers. I know people who have started as a guest service agent at a Marriott Courtyard 5 years ago, and they're the GM of that Courtyard today.
Okay.
In 5 years. They went from a $18 an hour job to a six-figure job.
In 5 years.
In 5 years. Without going to hotel school.
Right.
Okay? They took a few online courses, whatever the case may be. They hustled, they worked it, their customers spoke volumes about them, and they weren't afraid to jump in and say, yeah, I'll try it.
Yeah.
Sure, why not? Yeah. I carried trays, dropped a lot of coffee. Nobody ever gave me a tray ever again.
Right.
But I tried it. And I jumped in and did it. And if my stepson's girlfriend just started at a hotel, first job out of school. She's so excited about it. She's the kind of person she's great vibe, energy. She's jumping in everything.
Willing to try new
She will be
things.
a GM in 5 to 7 years. No question. She hustles and she knows it. And for people that learn and are not afraid to put in the time and, oh my God, it's 9 o'clock at night, I'm going to get called in, whatever. If you have the time and the ability and you get energized by that organized chaos, then the hotel business is a great career opportunity for you.
That's awesome. Well, thank you for coming in.
Absolutely. It was a pleasure.
And we will be back with another episode.